Most people think a house is the finish line. I've come to believe it's often the starting line of a very expensive race. Today's idea is don't buy a house. Here's what I did for 30 years. That sentence can sound like I'm attacking a dream. I'm not. I'm simply asking you to treat the biggest purchase of your life with the same calm thinking you'd use in any serious decision. On this channel, I speak in the voice of a long-term investor, lessons inspired by value investing, not a promise that I am any particular public figure. The goal is clarity, not celebrity. Here's my main point. Shelter is a need, but ownership is a strategy. And strategies should be chosen, not inherited from culture, family pressure, or internet advice. For decades, I kept my housing costs boring. Not because I couldn't do more, but because more house is rarely the thing that makes life safer. A steady cash buffer, low debt, and patient investing have a way of doing that quietly. I learned early that the world will always offer you a bigger payment and call it progress. But progress is not what you can buy. Progress is what you can keep month after month without losing sleep. Stay with me to the end, because I'll show you the simple question I used for years before making any big commitment. The all-in cost most people ignore, and the small habit that built more freedom than any fancy address ever could. If you've ever felt torn between the dream of ownership and the desire for peace, this conversation is for you. Let's slow down together. I want you to picture this. You sign the papers, you walk in, and the house is quiet. For a moment, it feels like victory. Then the first bill arrives, and the second, and the third. That's when many people realize they didn't just buy a home, they bought a set of obligations. Take a breath and keep thinking long term. Let's talk about the real problem. Most people buy a house for emotional reasons and then try to justify it with financial words. It starts innocently. You see friends posting keys. A relative says renting is wasting money. A coworker tells you if you don't buy now, you'll never catch up. And one day, you realize you're shopping for a monthly payment. Not a home. The bank offers you a loan that feels like an award. You stretch your budget because you don't want to look small. You accept a payment that leaves no room for surprises. And then life does what life always does. It surprises you. A car breaks down, work slows, a family member needs help, prices rise. Suddenly the mortgage isn't just a bill, it's a weight that follows you into every decision. You say no to opportunities because moving is hard. You stay in a job you dislike because you need the paycheck to protect the house. And then there are the hidden costs no one celebrates on social media. Repairs, insurance increases, taxes, fees, agents, lawyers, and the time you lose chasing problems you didn't plan for. Even simple things, plumbing, paint, a leaking roof can turn into months of stress. There's also the emotional cost. You start comparing your home to other homes. You start upgrading to keep up. The house becomes a scoreboard. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know this. You're not weak, you're human, and you can redesign the plan. The goal isn't to win an argument about renting. The goal is to build a life where money stops shouting at you every month. People also underestimate how much ownership culture can shame you. You can be doing everything right, saving, investing, staying out of debt, and still feel like you're failing because you don't have a deed. But paying rent is not paying nothing. It's paying for shelter, safety, and flexibility. Here are the core lessons I learned. The slow way, the kind of lessons that don't trend, but they do work. 1. Separate a home from an investment. A home can be wonderful for stability and family life, but after interest, maintenance, taxes, insurance, and upgrades, the financial return can be lower than people assume. 2. Don't let the bank set your lifestyle. The maximum loan they approve is not a recommendation. It's simply what they think you can survive. Your goal isn't survival, it's peace. 3. Keep housing costs boring and predictable. If your housing payment makes you nervous, it's too big. Nervous money makes rushed decisions, and rushed decisions are usually expensive. 4. Respect opportunity cost. Every naira or dollar tied up in one property is money, not working elsewhere. A big down payment can be a decade of patient compounding if invested consistently. 5. Understand leverage. A mortgage is a form of leverage. Leverage can help, but it also magnifies mistakes. In a tough season, leverage removes choices. 6. Flexibility is wealth. The ability to move for a better job, to downsize, to take a risk, or to pause without panic is a powerful financial advantage. 7. Count transaction costs. Buying and selling property often involves fees that can wipe out years of growth. Many people only look at the selling price and forget what it costs to get there. 8. Build the foundation first. Emergency fund, insurance, and low debt. A house sits on a physical foundation. Your finances need one too. 9. Buy what you can maintain, not what you can qualify for. Ownership is not just a purchase, it's a long-term responsibility. If you remember one thing, remember this. The purpose of money is to support your life, not to pressure it. 10. Match the decision to your temperament. If you know you worry easily, choose the option that reduces worry. So what did I actually do for 30 years? I made my housing decision with one goal: protect the gap between what I earned and what I spent. I lived below my means, even when my means grew. That's not a punishment, it's a strategy. Because the gap is where savings are born, and savings are what give you options. When people asked why I didn't upgrade, I kept it simple. I'd rather own a little more freedom than a little more square footage. I'd rather have a cushion than a cabinet full of things I don't use. And I treated housing like a fixed cost I wanted to control. If I rented modestly. If I owned modestly. Either way, I avoided turning a roof into a trophy. I also had a simple routine. Once a year, I reviewed my costs and asked if my income dropped for 6 months, would my housing still be easy to pay? If the answer was no, I knew the risk was too high. The extra money didn't disappear. I used it to do 3 unglamorous things. 1. Keep cash for emergencies so I never had to borrow at a bad time. 2. Avoid high-interest debt like it was a fire. And 3. Invest steadily in productive assets, month after month, year after year. That steady approach is not exciting in the short run. In the long run, it becomes a quiet engine. When you keep your obligations small, you give compounding the space to work. And here's the part people miss. Modest housing buys you patience. It lets you wait for better prices, better jobs, better opportunities. Patience is expensive when your bills are too big. Let me tell you a short story. Not about finance textbooks, but about human nature. 2 neighbors lived on the same street. Both worked hard. Both earned about the same. The first neighbor bought the biggest house he could get approved for. The day he moved in, everyone clapped, and it looked like success. But then the years went by. The house needed repairs. The payments never stopped. The neighbor took overtime even when he was tired, because the house demanded it. Vacations became rare. Investing became someday. He wasn't living in the house, he was feeding it. One year, his job changed. Income fell for a few months, not forever, just a rough season. But the house didn't care. It still wanted its payment. So he borrowed. Then he borrowed again. And slowly, the dream became a chain. The second neighbor lived in a smaller place. Nothing fancy. People didn't clap. But that neighbor quietly built habits. A savings account that grew. A small investment plan that ran automatically. And a life that didn't depend on perfect months. After 10 years, the first neighbor had a big address and constant stress. The second neighbor had options. The ability to change jobs, start a business, support family, and handle emergencies without panic. Now here's the lesson. A house can be like a shiny tractor. It looks powerful, but if it takes all your cash flow, you have no seed left to plant. The seed is what compounds savings, skills, investments, and time. Patience isn't passive. Patience is planting, watering, and letting seasons do their work. Quiet choices often build the loudest results later. The first neighbor wasn't a bad person. He simply confused applause with security. Applause is loud, but it doesn't pay for a roof when income dips. The second neighbor wasn't lucky. He just kept a margin. Let's slow down and do the math people avoid, because math makes the decision less emotional. When you buy a house, you don't just pay the price on the brochure. You pay interest over many years. You pay closing costs. You pay moving costs. You pay for maintenance and repairs that arrive on their own schedule. Not yours. You pay insurance, property taxes, and sometimes service charges. You pay with weekends spent fixing things, and you pay with the risk that your income might change while the payment stays the same. So the right comparison is not rent versus mortgage. The right comparison is all-in cost of owning versus all-in cost of renting, and then asking what happens to the difference. Make a simple list: mortgage or rent, taxes and insurance, repairs and maintenance fund. Utilities changes bigger space often means bigger bills, fees, agents, legal documents, service charges, and the cost of money, what your down payment could have earned elsewhere. If renting costs less, what do you do with the gap? If you spend it, you gain nothing. But if you invest it steadily, the gap becomes powerful. Here's a plain idea. Compounding rewards time more than talent. A small amount invested regularly for 30 years can outgrow a one-time big move made under pressure. Also remember, home equity is not the same as cash. You can't buy groceries with equity unless you borrow against it or sell. Liquidity matters, especially in emergencies. So I don't say never buy, I say compare honestly. Then decide slowly, because the slow decision is usually the safer one. A practical note: many homeowners set aside a small maintenance fund every month. Even if nothing breaks this month, something will break eventually. Planning for it keeps you from using credit cards as emergency tools. Take a breath and keep thinking long term. Now let's be fair. There are times when buying a home is a very reasonable choice. Buying can make sense when you expect to stay in one place for a long time, when the home is truly affordable, and when you can still save and invest after the purchase. The house should fit inside your life, not push everything else out. Buying can also make sense when your rent is unstable, when your family needs the stability of ownership, or when the numbers in your area actually favor owning after all the costs are counted. But I want you to notice the word I keep repeating: after. After you have an emergency fund, after you've removed toxic debt, after your income is stable enough that a rough year won't break you, after you've practiced living with the payment for a while. Here's a practical test I like. Before you buy, pretend you already did. For 6 months, set aside the future housing payment into savings. The mortgage amount plus taxes, insurance, and a maintenance allowance. Don't touch it. Live as if the payment is real. If that feels painful, that's information. If it feels easy, that's confidence. Another test. Ask, if prices fell tomorrow, would I still be happy to live here for 10 years? If the only reason you're buying is price growth, you're not buying a home, you're making a bet. And please don't buy out of fear. Fear of rising prices. Fear of missing out. Fear of what people will say. Fear is expensive. Fear makes you rush. Rushing makes you overpay. The goal is not to win a housing race. The goal is to build a life that stays steady when the economy gets noisy. I also like to think in seasons. There are seasons for renting, seasons for saving, seasons for buying, and seasons for paying down debt. If you force the buying season too early, you can destroy the other seasons. Take a breath and keep thinking long term. Here are practical steps you can take immediately, whether you rent or own. Action 1. Write down your all-in housing number. Include rent or mortgage, taxes, insurance, power, water, repairs, and a maintenance fund. If you don't know repairs, estimate a small monthly amount. Unknown costs become known when you plan for them. Action 2. Build a real emergency buffer. Start with 1 month of expenses, then aim for 3 to 6. A buffer turns a crisis into an inconvenience. Action 3. Set a peace of mind limit for housing. Choose a payment that still allows consistent saving and investing. If your plan only works in a perfect month, it's not a plan. Action 4. Automate the seed. If you rent, invest the difference automatically. If you own, automate savings for maintenance and long-term investing so the house doesn't consume your future. Action 5. Practice quiet upgrades. Instead of bigger space, improve skills, health, and earning power. A better career is often a stronger asset than a bigger building. Action 6. When you feel pressure, zoom out. Ask, what decision will I thank myself for in 10 years? 10-year thinking removes most bad purchases. Action 7. Keep your paperwork clean. Know your interest rate, your fees, your insurance terms, and what happens if income dips. Clarity is confidence. Do these quietly for a year, and you may feel something rare. Calm. Calm is what financial progress feels like. Action 8. If you want to buy eventually, start a down payment plus closing costs account and contribute to it monthly. Watching it grow will reduce the temptation to rush. Action 9. Practice living with a margin. After you pay housing, you should still be able to save, invest, and help family without borrowing. If that margin doesn't exist, the home is too heavy. Action 10. Decide your why. If your why is status, pause. Let me return to the question that guided me for years. Will owning this house increase my freedom or decrease it? Freedom isn't a motivational poster. Freedom is very practical. It's the ability to handle surprises. It's the ability to say no. It's the ability to choose. If owning would have tightened my life, I waited. I didn't wait because I was afraid. I waited because I was patient. And while I waited, I practiced the habits that make ownership easier later. Saving regularly, investing consistently, and keeping debt low. I also reminded myself of something simple. You don't get extra points in life for buying early. You get results for staying solvent, staying calm, and letting time work. And I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind if you haven't bought a house yet. You are only behind if you are spending everything you earn and calling it normal. A home can be part of a good life, but it should never be the thing that forces you into anxiety. The moment your house becomes your identity, it also becomes your burden. Wealth is not the keys you hold up for a photo. Wealth is the quiet structure under your life. The emergency fund, the investments, the skills, the relationships, and the habits that keep you stable in hard seasons. Choose the option that keeps your future options open. That's what a long-term investor does, and it's also what a peaceful person does. There's another quiet truth. Many people don't actually want the work of ownership. They want the feeling of arrival. But arrival is a feeling that fades. The maintenance stays. If you choose ownership, choose it because you love the home and the life it supports, not because you want to prove something. Proving things is expensive. So here's the calm conclusion I want to leave you with. Buying a home can be a beautiful decision when it's made from stability, not pressure. But buy as soon as possible is not a rule of wealth. Often, the wiser move is to keep housing modest, invest the difference, and let time do what time does best. If you're thinking about buying, slow down and do the all-in math. If you're renting, stop calling it failure. Renting can be a smart season when you use it to build savings, reduce debt, and invest steadily. And if you already own and feel squeezed, don't beat yourself up. Start rebuilding breathing room, reduce lifestyle creep, increase your buffer, refinance or restructure if possible, and make a simple investing plan you can keep. Here's a simple recap. You can remember, keep housing boring, protect your cash flow, plant seeds consistently, let compounding work. If this helped you think more clearly about money and big decisions, you may want to stay with me here. Subscribe if you'd like, and share this with someone who feels pressured to buy now. Remember the title. Don't buy a house just because you can buy or rent in a way that lets your future breathe. Truly,